the one and only Joe diGenova, former U.S. Attorney for the District of Columbia. And earlier, your ears must have been burning, Joe. I nominated you to take up the new investigation into FISA abuse at the Justice Department. Are you willing to take up that job?
Oh, you always have to be willing to serve your country when asked.
All right, so we have learned that the Mueller report has been delivered. That would be delivered to the Attorney General?
That's correct. Confidentially delivered to the Attorney General for his review, consideration, and decision about whether or not to disclose any of it to the Congress and the public. Certainly the President will be entitled to look at it since he is a subject of it, purportedly, the President and his lawyers. But they are within the ambit of all the privileges which were asserted in that, so that's perfectly okay.
Does this mean that the Mueller investigation is over?
Well, apparently not. I mean, we're told that some of the key players are leaving, so I can only imagine that whatever may be left is, of course, I would say relatively insignificant. So if it isn't over, I would say that it's mostly over. The reason for its existence is certainly over, assuming he doesn't say in the report, we intend to investigate this for another 2 years until we take out every single solitary lead. I think they've done all of that. I think it's over.
Well, and the way it's being reported by media outlets, although you can't trust these guys because they don't know half the stuff that's really happening here, they're all saying that they're leading all of their stories saying Robert Mueller has wrapped up his investigation. That's sort of what's being how it's being described. So at this point, then, that would mean that the indictments that we know about or the guilty pleas, Michael Flynn, Paul Manafort, George Papadopoulos, and the anonymous or unknown Russian companies that will never see the inside of a courtroom, that's pretty much it. That's what he did.
That is correct.
Well, would you describe this as a pretty big nothing burger then, considering how it was first proposed?
Well, I don't think there's any doubt that from the very first moment that Rod Rosenstein improperly authorized the special counsel to protect himself from revelations concerning the FISA warrants and everything relative to that, and, of course, the 25th Amendment coup d'etat, this has never been about anything legitimate. The fact that it took this 2 years is outrageous, in my opinion. I think it was elongated purposely to protect people in the Obama Justice Department and FBI and Rod Rosenstein. We shall see what is revealed about it, and more importantly, what happens next, which is to what extent the current Attorney General will authorize grand juries to investigate the FISA abuses and also the unmaskings and the leaking of highly classified national security information during, after the president's inauguration. This is not over as far as holding accountable DOJ and FBI. They are at this point still unrepentant, and they have not recuperated from their downfall.
We're speaking to Joe diGenova right now as he clears his throat here for a moment. We caught him, with about 30 seconds notice here with this breaking story that the Robert Mueller report has been delivered to Attorney General Barr. And, earlier in the program, Joe, we had John Solomon on, and he said, if in fact this report does not have the collusion narrative that we've been promised for over 2 years, if it doesn't have the obstruction of justice charges that we've been hearing about for the last 2 years, then politicians need to face a reckoning. Adam Schiff and Mark Warner, who have gone on television and saying there's ample evidence for these charges, will there be a reckoning against these politicians who have been saying one thing in the media when they're in the Gang of Eight? They know full well that evidence did not exist.
No, they will not face a reckoning because they're Democrats. The media is totally corrupt. The media is an extension of the Democratic Party. I do not expect them to be held accountable. In fact, I think both Schiff and Warner represent the kind of low level to which American politics has sunk. Mark Warner is an embarrassment. You'll recall he made jokes about classified information and leaks at a fundraising party. Adam Schiff is, of course, nothing more than an unhinged screwball who sees himself as a presidential candidate through this lens. No, they will not be held accountable. And indeed, all the people in the media who have propagated this false story will move on to Jerry Nadler and Schiff and others in an effort to destroy this president. But I have news for them. This president is not going to be destroyed. He's going to be stronger as a result of this, and he's going to win in 2020 and just make their lives miserable. And he's going to put at least one more justice on the Supreme Court.
Joe diGenova is our guest, former U.S. attorney, and you are also a former special prosecutor, by the way. You have filled this role before. What does this report look like exactly? Is this a letter? Is it a memo? Is it or does it vary depending on the investigation?
Well, the report that I wrote was required by law because I was appointed under a statute, the independent counsel statute, and there were specific provisions in that statute that required a report to go to Congress and to the public. That statute was allowed to lapse by the Democrats after Bill Clinton went through 8 independent counsels. So what exists now is a regulation in the Justice Department which provides only for a confidential report showing what cases Mueller indicted and what cases he did not indict and why. And that is all. That is all he is authorized to do. He is not allowed to opine about whether or not the president should be impeached. He's not allowed to do anything other than here's my cases I indicted and here are the cases I didn't and why I didn't. And so there we are. And that's all it's going to be. It should be a relatively brief memorandum. If it's 50 pages long, it's too long.
Yeah. And Joe, you and your wife and law partner, Victoria Thompson, you have made the case, and I think it's a very compelling one, that the president can't be indicted. The Justice Department has given that ruling twice now that the president can't be indicted. Yes. So that's pretty that's pretty standard understanding of what a Justice Department can do with regard to a duly elected president. So is it possible that this report will say, listen, we believe that the president has broken these laws, but we don't have the power or authority to indict him, and that's our conclusion. And then the House will take that up for impeachment.
I do not expect that, given where we are and given the questions that the president answered. I cannot conceive of that type of language being in this report under who we didn't indict and why.
Right.
I cannot conceive either under either theory, either collusion or obstruction of justice for firing Comey. I can't imagine that there would be anything like that in this report.
All right. Joe diGenova, thank you for jumping on here at a moment's notice with this huge breaking story.
My pleasure.
Our almost 2-year nightmare seems to be ending with the Mueller investigation. I think what happens next
we
shall see. What happens next will be very interesting. Joe, thank you so much, sir. Always good.